the CEO of Peace Coffee. It's nearly a $20 billion industry. Did you know that every day across the globe, 2.25 billion cups of coffee are consumed? It's something that really keeps people in common, really. It's a reason people come together. And we're going to talk all things coffee with the CEO of Peace Coffee. She's in studio, Lee Wallace. Hi there, Lee.
Good afternoon, Roshini.
It's great to have you in. I mean, I think you know I'm a tea drinker. I just never picked up the taste of coffee. I love the smell of it, though. My husband is a big coffee drinker. My mother, definitely have coffee drinkers in my life. But it is also a movement, right? I mean, there's the whole feel of the coffee shop, which I spend a lot of time in, and just that vibe. So the thought that different events happening with weather around our globe, with the oceans, could affect the coffee production over the next decades is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty big deal right now. The coffee industry is unified, and we're pretty in tune with the fact that climate change is impacting coffee growing communities, and it may impact people's cups of coffee here in the United States.
You know, and it's interesting, too, because coffee, I didn't even know this, coffee is the second most valuable commodity exported by developing nations. The livelihoods of more than 125 million people rely on coffee. And I'm guessing that's just growing it. I mean, think about all the baristas all around the world, too.
Yeah, it's true. Coffee is a huge industry. So in developing nations, coffee is the second most valuable traded commodity after oil. So this is 70 countries on 5 different continents where people are heavily relying on coffee to support their families, put food on the table, send their kids to school.
It's amazing, and I love that it's 70 countries in that bean belt, but the top 5 countries in the bean belt are Brazil, Vietnam, Colombia, Ethiopia, and Indonesia. So what's great is that, that's 3 different continents mentioned there, if I'm counting that right. And so that in itself says, just how widespread anything that could happen to this crop could be so devastating.
Yeah, it's true. And it's a real joy working in the coffee industry. I fell in love working with coffee because all of a sudden I realized here's this product that tells the stories of so many different communities around the world. Here's this product that connects so many different people. So when you're sitting there drinking your cup of coffee in the morning, or in your case, tea, but maybe you're looking at your husband's cup of coffee. Think about all the different people who have touched that product and all the different communities that are involved in getting people's cups of coffee to them. And then in the face of something like climate change, we really have to think about the scope and think about how many people this is impacting. There's so many stories that I get told on my coffee travels as I travel around the world. And I began to hear stories about the impact of climate change long before people in the United States were really wrapping their heads around the impact.
Climate change is definitely a hot topic in politics. It has gotten so politicized, but your research is showing, and just research, that climate change is impacting coffee-growing communities, and that if current trends continue, a global study predicts that the total growing area for coffee will be reduced worldwide by, get this, 50% by 2050. That is not that far away from now.
No, it's not far at all. We work with a community in Mexico, and some of my staff members were down there about 1.5 years ago, and they were already seeing that farmers were switching away from coffee because in the Veracruz region of Mexico, coffee's not very viable anymore. In Chiapas, Mexico, in that region, coffee's not going to be viable by the year 2020, according to estimates. So we're seeing some very real changes going on in weather patterns in regions where coffee's grown. There's a way that people can get very political about the conversation about climate change, but I prefer to really just think about the stories that I'm hearing from coffee growing communities. For example, years ago, I was traveling in Peru, And we began coming to the edge of different communities, and there would be men with guns protecting the entry as people were trying to get into these communities. And I asked the people I was traveling with who were from that area, I said, why are these men with guns protecting the road? And they said, oh, well, the climate has changed. And so what used to grow here, we can't grow anymore. And they're trying to keep drug gangs out so that people aren't switching from the traditional pineapple and mango that was grown in this area to drugs. And I
Wow.
said, yeah, it was very eye-opening to me. And they looked right at me point blank and said, those of us who live here have already accepted the reality of climate change. It's people like you who aren't feeling it every day who might be confused.
We are chatting and having a great conversation about coffee and really global issues right now with Lee Wallace. She's the CEO of Peace Coffee, and you can ask your questions or share your comments, whether it's about organic farming or your favorite coffee flavor for the fall. It's a fun season for coffee right now, too. Give us a ring, 651-989-9226 or 866-989-9226. You can also text 81807. Peace Coffee is her company. I would love to give a little shout out to any of the other favorite coffee haunts around town. I know I have mine for my tea. Give us a text, 81807. I'm happy to give them some airtime. All right, so we've talked a lot about the growers and the climate, but then there are also different ways that coffee is grown. And you're saying that there are some better ways, and that's what we should be insisting on as coffee purchasers.
Yes, that's true. So coffee grows naturally. Coffee is an understory plant. What does that mean? It means that it grows in tropical areas, and think about a rainforest. You have lots of tall trees, birds, insects, all kinds of wildlife live there. And then underneath that, there's a lower level of trees, lower level of plants. Coffee is one of those understory plants traditionally. It likes growing in the shade. And so what we're realizing as we research climate change is, number one, you don't want forests cut down, right? We all know that preserving rainforests is important, and that really emphasizing growing coffee under shade it will help us preserve those rainforests and help the communities that are in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking for whether it's organic or what are the terms we should be looking for?
Sure. Yep. So shade grown and organic go hand in hand,
okay.
Right? So organic is a certification you can look for that guarantees that product was grown without the use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers. But it's only when you put coffee in full sun and it gets really stressed out that you have to apply a lot of chemicals. So looking for organic coffee is a really good way to be sure that your coffee is doing what's best for coffee growing communities, and it is actually a tool in the fight against climate change.
And Lee, you and Peace Coffee are also really trying to help farmers figure out and be resilient and work with reforestation. You, as Peace Coffee, are the founders of Carbon, Climate, and Coffee. What is that initiative all about?
Sure. It's an initiative where we say we're going to put aside 3 cents for every pound of coffee that we purchase from a coffee growing community. And then we have coffee growing communities apply for grants through that fund, and those grants go to help the community get more climate resilient. Now, climate resiliency is a term we're using in coffee right now because we're saying we know that climate change is real, and what we need to do is help these communities adapt to that reality.
Again, the stats are just amazing. 70 different countries that are growing, that are part of the bean belt. And, it is pretty amazing how world production has more than tripled since the 1960s. Consumption goes up by 5% every year. And the statistic that I think is most alarming is if we don't turn the tide in some kind of big way, by what year might coffee become extinct as a real viable product, would you say?
Well, we don't know the answer to that. We do know that coffee, the birthplace of coffee, is thought to be in Ethiopia, and that is where the world's genetic diversity of coffee lies. So the big scare is that by 2100, researchers are suggesting that the Ethiopia will be impacted, and that's something that we're in a race against time.
Well, we're getting some texts coming in, talking with Lee Wallace, CEO of Peace Coffee. You can too. Give us a ring or text 81807, our phone line, 651-989-9226. Hashtag Hutch for Hennepin says, I love Peace Coffee.
Well, thank you. Hashtag Hutch for Hennepin. Appreciate it.
That was very smart, getting a little publicity for their campaign too. I love it. I love that creative PR. So your roastery is on Minnehaha Avenue, and then you have some coffee shops. Tell people where those are so they can find you.
Yeah, our flagship coffee shop is on Minnehaha Avenue, so it's south of Lake Street, 3262 Minnehaha Avenue. And then we have two coffee shops in downtown Minneapolis, one on the Skyway level in Capella Tower and one street level in Capella Tower.
And I know there are two because one time I had to meet a client and I was downstairs and she was upstairs. We were texting each other, where are you? We found each other, but it was fun to see both those locations. And that Peace Coffee is actually right across the street from WCCO Radio. So that's kind of fun. It is a hot time for coffee right now, too. And I say that seriously and figuratively in that it is the fall. We're heading into Halloween. We're heading into the December and November holidays. So there are all things kind of pumpkin and coffee right now. Do you have any favorites or any tips for people when they either come into your stores or buy your beans and then take them home to do whatever they do with coffee beans?
Sure. Yes. The number one thing is people's kids are back in school. So everybody's fueling their day in a whole new way, right? We're all going into holiday season mode. It's getting darker. It's getting colder. We see people drinking more coffee at this time of year. We have seasonal drinks at our coffee shop, so I suggest people check those out. We have a very talented staff who loves coming up with menus of seasonal drinks. We always have, right now we have a tea that actually a seasonal drink made with rooibos. Yeah, we have. It's called.
Is that the Autumn Honey Blaze?
Yes, it is.
I saw that and I was wondering if that was tea because I know rooibos tea. So that's not some blend with coffee. It's straight up tea.
Straight up tea. Yep, it's
nice.
It's mixed with honey, allspice, and then steamed milk of your choice.
I may have to check that out.
I would suggest checking.
And
that
then
out.
I'm curious, the Harvest Moon. It's made from squash.
Well, pumpkin is a squash. So,
okay. Got it.
But yes, we do rotate different squashes through. So,
but there's coffee in there with the pumpkin.
Yep. But our take on it, I mean, it's become almost obligatory that you have to do some kind of pumpkin drink. But we get creative with it, and as we roll through squash season, we incorporate different squashes in. So you might go and get a butternut squash one time, and another time you might get the traditional pumpkin.
Lee, if it's not obvious to you, I'm really not a cook. So, yes, of course pumpkin is a squash, but I was sitting here thinking of butternut or something else. Final question for you before we have to say goodbye. It is also a time where people think about some of the alcohol that might go into some of these drinks. So I will say that one alcohol that I do love is coffee-flavored Kahlua. I love it as a dessert drink, Kahlua and cream. Are there some ways that you would recommend we blend in coffee or some of these other flavorings that you're doing? I'm not saying I'm recommending everyone drink, but it is that festive time of the year, so it comes up. So maybe some holiday tips for hosts out there.
Absolutely. There's a variety of different coffee liqueurs, especially local coffee liqueurs coming on the market. So one good tip is to check out if you drink alcohol, visit your local liquor store and talk to them about all the creative things distillers are doing with coffee, because there's some great new products hitting the shelf.
Well, what is your favorite coffee? Like, how do you like your coffee? CEO of Peace Coffee, Lee Wallace.
I like having a shot of espresso in the afternoon after lunch. That's one of my favorite things. Now, in the morning, I get up. People think I drink 16 cups of coffee a day, but I drink a cup of coffee in the morning at home, and then we have always the coffee flowing at work, and then I head into work and start drinking coffee. But but
probably not 16 cups.
Not 16. No, I'd be a wreck. But what I do like is I do like to explore different coffees. So once you're in coffee for a while and you get used to tasting the flavors of different coffees, I like exploring different kinds and different origins throughout the course of my day.
All right. Well, maybe I will have to step into a Peace Coffee for a nice holiday gift for my husband.
Yes.
All right. We'll get something creative going.
Thank you.
Well, Lee Wallace, thank you so much. Peace Coffee is everywhere. They're online. They tweet at Peace_coffee. They're also on Facebook. Thank you so much for coming in studio.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here.